Hi, good evening, everyone. I see many of our friends of the Shriver Center are coming in now to our discussion this evening. So we will get started just because we have a very exciting conversation this evening. Good evening once again to all. My name is Kenya Lambert, and I serve as the Vice President of Development for the Shriver Center on Poverty Law. Welcome to the Shriver Center's fundraiser featuring former NFL linebacker, humanitarian, and now ESPN analyst Sam Acho, and our very own Audra Wilson, who is the president and CEO of the Shriver Center. Thank you all for joining today's webinar. Before getting started, I have several housekeeping items to review. To begin, we are recording today's webinar for our Changemaker community. Secondly, we ask that you use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen to connect with us and be in community. And lastly, towards the end of the webinar, we'll make time for question and answer towards Audra and Sam. So we have a very exciting evening. Now, please take a moment to tell us who you are and where you are joining us from today in the chat. And for those who are new to our community, welcome. The Shriver Center uses the power of the law to fight for economic and racial justice for people in poverty. And here's a bit more about our story. And I'm going to ask my colleague to turn up the volume so we can hear the wonderful
Poverty has always been everything. As long as there's been poverty, as long as there's been racial injustice, we've been here fighting that good fight. This is a moment where our work is being highlighted. For everything that we've been saying for over 50 years, talking about why it is so important for us to be focusing on racial and economic justice, people now see manifested in COVID and manifested in this period of racial awakening.
Change laws and change lives. Not one, not two, not thousands, but millions of people.
Today we litigate, shape policy, and train multi-state networks of lawyers, community leaders, and activists nationwide.
We see ourselves as building up an army of advocates that are equipped to do their anti-poverty work with racial justice at the core.
Understanding as a legal advocate that you are working in partnership in collaboration with community, and you are not the lead of this movement.
There's more of an urgency when it's actually your situation.
We need to make sure that our systems are giving people what they actually need to live a dignified life.
To unapologetically tackle racial inequities.
This is just a fraction of our work, and there's still so much more to do. And that's why we need to use this momentum to propel our work forward.
Using litigation and policy advocacy to affect change where it's needed most.
You're actually part of this right now. We're all part of the movement.
No podemos hacer esto sin ti. And we can't do this work without you.
Go forth and use your voice for positive change. Thanks for coming.
Hi, once again, my name is Kenya Lambert. I serve as the Vice President of Development for the Shriver Center. Thank you for joining us if you joined during our video. And thank you all for joining today's conversation with Sam Acho. We have a very exciting evening. And this virtual event is open to members and future members of the Shriver Center's Changemaker community, which is a group of supporters making deep investments toward lasting policy solutions. There will be an opportunity for each person to take action towards the end of this webinar. With that, let's get started.
So I want to actually take over and start our conversation off with Sam. So there you are, Sam. How are you? Thank you so much for being with us this evening. We're so happy to have you. We are honored and just looking forward to this conversation.
I'm excited to be here, Audra. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you all for joining. I know many of us wish this could be in person, but I'm so glad to be here, albeit virtually.
Yes, yes, that is true. Normally we would be doing this in person, but hey, baby steps. So we're happy that you're joining us today. So first and foremost, I do want to congratulate you on your awesome new gig with ESPN. I think that is amazing. So for our sports fans out there, you should know that you get to see. How often are we going to get to hear you now, Sam?
Yeah, so funny enough, so I'll be on ESPN tomorrow morning, a show called Get Up. I'll be on tomorrow morning, I'll be on Thursday morning, and then when the season starts, the college football and NFL season, I'll be on every Saturday and most Thursdays throughout the fall, talking college football, talking NFL. And so I'm excited. This news is a few weeks old, so I'm not that old, but I'm super pumped. So you'll see me tonight, and don't be surprised if you're at the gym somewhere and you see me tomorrow morning.
Well, we'll be listening, and we've got a lot of sports fans and football fans, so we're very excited that you in this new endeavor of yours. So let's jump in and let's talk a little bit more about you. So clearly, we've been talking about your athletic endeavors. We have been talking a bit about your activism with Athletes for Justice, but I want our audience to get a chance to get to know you personally. So let's talk a little bit more about your upbringing and the source of your motivation and your drive. So just a little background for both of us. Like me, you are a child of immigrants. So my parents happen to hail from Jamaica and yours are from Nigeria. And now I'll say for Jamaicans, education is paramount. It's something that is kind of instilled in us and just beaten into our heads, and that's what we strive for. So talk about the importance of education in your own upbringing and how it's both underscored your career and your life choices.
Well, for me and my family, education has been everything. And so people who know me more recently, they'll say, oh, wow, Sam, you won the Campbell Trophy in college, which is the academic Heisman Trophy. It's the most prestigious award you can win in college. They also say, wow, Sam, you got named Sporting News top 20 smartest athletes in all of sports. Wow, Sam, you went and got your MBA while you were playing in the NFL from the #1 international business school in the world, from the Thunderbird School of Global Management. Wow, you care a lot about school, or you just like bragging about your accolades, right? It's neither, but it's more so how I was brought up. So my parents were both born and raised in Nigeria, which is a developing country, born and raised in a country that went through a lot. It went through wars, and my dad fought in the Nigerian Civil War, and my mom grew up with not a lot, and they came over to America. They came over and started, for lack of better terms, living the American dream. My dad, he's a mental health professional, a marriage counselor, a doctor in psychology. My mom is in the medical field as well, but more than anything, they have a passion for helping and serving. And so even when they came to America and started working their way up the ladder, as a kid, two things I would see. And hopefully this is an encouragement to some of the parents that are there, even if you're not a parent, maybe you're a mentor. One, I would see my parents always going back to Nigeria and serving every summer. They'd go and take a couple weeks off of work and with doctors and nurses and serve, number one. But number two, and I haven't shared this often with people, but I saw my parents value education from a young age. So they put us in the #1 rated private schools and all these different things, and homework and all the things were important. But even as I was going through school and graduating, my mom, I have 3 other siblings. Once we all graduated high school, she went back to school. She started off as an RN, a registered nurse, and then she was taking care of the kids. And then fast forward, we graduate, and then she became a nurse practitioner, went back to school. And then we graduate college, and she goes back to school again and becomes a doctor in nurse practitioning, a DNP.
Yep.
At 50-something, 60-something years old. So I just want to quickly just kind of set the room, maybe even set the table, and just remind us that, yes, we're all talking about all these things that sometimes can feel like they're big and far away and unattainable and unreachable. But for me, you heard about some of the accolades, and maybe I might tell you more, maybe they ran out. But like for me, I saw it at a young age. And even if I didn't see it at a young age, I saw it as I grew older. When I'm 18 and 19 and 22, I'm in the NFL thinking that I've made it. I played 9 years in the NFL, yet my mom is a doctor now. So like, who are we really applauding, right? And so I think just to encourage everyone listening, when you're thinking about, man, ways you can make an impact on your family or your community or those around you, it doesn't always take big, huge steps and big, huge reaches. Sometimes it's just doing what's in front of you, going back to school. Sometimes it's going and serving in your community. Your kids see that. The people you mentor see that. Sometimes your coworkers see that. Even we're talking about Nora, and yes, we were joking earlier, Nora and I have a great connection. I know we'll talk about it in a little bit, about how we connected about 3 or so years ago when I was trying to figure out this whole nonprofit space. But Nora right now is at her son's baseball game, playoff baseball game, and her husband coaches the team. It's like we wear a lot more hats than we give ourselves credit for. And I think now is the time we start giving ourselves the credit for the hats that we wear, and also understand the impact that we're making as we're wearing these hats and being who we were made to be.
Thank you, Sam. And I'm really happy that you're underscoring the value of education. And even as an athlete now, obviously I'm not a professional athlete. However, I was recruited to run track in college, so that's my claim to fame. but I was also a scholar athlete, much like you. So the scholarship that I got was as much for my academics as it was for my running. And, I think it's so important, especially as you're talking to people here who are listening to us today, many of whom have children, know folks out in the community, that we really need to talk about the importance of education. And, we can have our athletic pursuits, but why it's so important for us to make sure that we're bolstering that with the education that we get for the life that we'll have during and beyond, our sporting lives.
Absolutely. And even to that point, there's so much more that we can learn. I remember in 2018, we talked about kind of the height of this kind of social justice, racial justice, at least when it came to the NFL. That's when it kind of hit me. A lot of us, we've been doing this work. I think everyone on this call, you've either known about or you've been involved, boots in the ground, doing the work. But in these last few months, weeks, and even years, it's come to this national stage and national prominence. So it's really, for a lot of us, it's perfect timing. But for me, in 2018, when it was right on the heels of Colin Kaepernick taking a knee in the NFL, not really knowing what to do, where to go, the NFL said, hey, if players really care about some of these issues, well, put your money where your mouth is. The NFL made a challenge to teams and said, hey, if you want to donate money and find organizations that are really doing the work, find them. And if you donate money, we will match it as a league. The NFL, Roger Goodell, the entire league will match it. And that's when I first, and obviously there's some familiar faces, that's when I first kind of started to find out more about Nora Jones, not the singer, right? Don't know why the song, not that Nora. And even Janice, who I see on this call, Janice Rogers. Yep. I was like, I got to get to know these people, right? Corals and Radio. I was like, I was looking for a lawyer, and what do we do? We'll start a nonprofit. and I know we're going to get into it more, but that was a year I actually tore my pec. I was out for the season, my last year in Chicago as a Bear. And funny enough, we talk about tragedy and downfall and things that could, things that you see as bad things. Yes, in a lot of ways it was a bad thing, but that was one of the best things that could happen to me. Why do you say that? Why would an injury be the best thing that could happen? It's because I had time, right? I had a passion to serve, I had a passion to learn, I had a passion, like every single one of you, to make a difference in my community. I just had no time. I was busy. I had games, I had practices, I had meetings, I had a family, I'm married, got 3 kids. I was busy. And I think about even this last year, COVID, 2020, and even early 21, and who knows what happens for the rest of the year. Yes, there's been so much devastation and downfall and the feeling of being distraught in the midst of COVID. But one of the benefits of this last year is that it's given us time to think back and to have this retrospective view of things that we can do. And so for me in 2018, when I tore my pec and had this time, I got a chance to sit and listen to Janice and to Nora and have these conversations about, hey, how do I do this? Even though I was watching and learning from afar. So I just think about, yes, we talked about education, which is important, but we can always continue to learn. We can always continue to use these things that look like negative things and turn them and flip them into a positive.
Absolutely. And so many things that you've discussed right now. I want to unpack some of that more. I have to give you a quick aside and a shout out. it must be this immigrant thing because my mom's a nurse too. And we were trying to convince her around 50 years old to go back to become a nurse practitioner. She decided not to, but I will say though that she still was so active and being the head nurse where she was, and she was really very inspirational. And so it's just we've got these parallels.
Yeah, and what an encouragement too, Audra. And like I don't know, sometimes like because I feel like this is like a family atmosphere. There's a few of us on this call, so we get a chance to really talk and get to know each other. I know we'll have some Q&A afterwards, which I'm really, really looking forward to. But sometimes we need those examples, right? I'm 32 years old. I just retired from the NFL. And so many people say, well, obviously you could say you're young, but you're retired, you played 9 years. Well, your best years are behind you, is what people may think. You reached the pinnacle. It's the NFL. Your best years are behind you. And thinking about Audra, your mom, who is a nurse, and my mom went back to school, DNP, right? Like all of us on this call, our best years are ahead of us. So
Absolutely.
Don't get caught in the lie or the trap. I know sometimes it's easy to believe, okay, 401k and saving up for retirement. And man, I've done all this work and it seems like it's not making any impact, or it seems like no one cares. Your best years are ahead of you. It is. It's still ahead. And so I just want to kind of set the table as we continue this conversation and discussion and the Q&A, that the best is still to come. And so in whatever field you are, or whatever, even as a parent or as a volunteer or as a leader in an organization, all the stuff we've done in the past, those are learning moments. The best is still right around the corner.
Absolutely. And even though I'm not quite 32 years old, I still am
My
guided
mom says
by
plus one. She's like, just plus one. Every birthday, it's just plus one,
Plus
right?
one.
So 32 plus one.
Plus one, right? As we're at plus one birthday in 2 weeks. No, I absolutely subscribe to that the best is yet to come. And quite frankly, COVID should be a reminder of that to everybody. Which makes me want to ask you, I want to, before we talk more about Athletes for Justice and more about your activism, I want to ask you a little bit about your book. So because you were that scholar athlete, and the intellectual guy that you are, you wrote a book called Let the World See You, How to Be Real in a World Full of Fakes. So let's unpack that a little bit more. To what does this title refer?
Absolutely. And it's funny, we got on this call a little bit earlier, making sure the setting was right and the visual. My head is blocking it's on this side now. I like the book. It's a little bit hard to see. Maybe I'll grab it towards the end. But in that 2018 season, yes, COVID happened for a lot of us. But for me, that year of isolation, that year of, man, like, I'll just call it pretending, right? Year of trying to carry all this weight and realizing that I couldn't carry it alone. That year happened for me in 2018. I mentioned tearing my pec and being out for the season. I had just signed a multi-million-dollar contract in the NFL. I was almost 3 times the average career span. Like, I had it made in so many people's eyes, yet on the inside, something was missing. I was trying to fit in and be like everybody else. I was trying to, instead of really using the gifts that I know God gave me, I was almost like shying back and playing small. And I honestly think it was that sometimes we know what we want at our core. We know the change we want to make. We know the person that we want to be. We know the kind of mom or dad or teacher or coach, leader that we want to be. But whether it's because of a pain from our past or a mistake that we've made, we stop being that person who we were meant to be.
Yeah.
And I found that in myself. I started not really showing my teammates the real me, the one who's jovial and laughing and hanging, because I felt like, well, in football, you got to be big, bad, tough. And yes, I have a side of me that is big and bad and tough, but there's another side that loves. I don't want to show that side. Education, we talked about education. That's everything to me. I mentioned I got my MBA while I was playing. I didn't tell any of my teammates that I was doing this. I did it in secret.
Yeah.
Why would you get your MBA from the #1 school in secret? Because I didn't want my teammates or coaches or staff or general manager to think that I didn't care all about football like they did. I was hiding. I was pretending. Some people know I'm a person of faith or a follower of Jesus. I didn't want people to really see that all the time in the NFL. Because now all of a sudden, well, you're the nice Christian guy.
Right.
And so like there was all these, even growing up, right? Nigerian culture and, in these different worlds. I went to a predominantly white school in Dallas, a predominantly Black church, grew up in this Nigerian kind of household, right? Parents were immigrants.
Yep.
And there was so much that I had, God had given me, but I didn't want to show it. I wanted to fit in, to be like everyone else. And the thing that I forgot is that we all have different gifts and abilities and perspectives that we all need to bring to bear. And so my book, Let the World See You, How to Be Real in a World Full of Fakes, is really a book about what it means to be seen for who you are, your passions, your desires, your gifts, your joys, your expertise, to be seen, to be known. It's one thing for people to see you, but to know you at an intimate level like this.
Yep.
To be known for who you are, your likes, your dislikes, your fears, things that, cause trepidation or acrimony. And then to be loved for who you are, seen, known, and loved. There are levels to that type of vulnerability and authenticity and transparency. And so that book, if I can move my head a little bit, that book is really my heart on a page. It's available on Amazon and anywhere you get your books. It's called Let the World See You, the real you, right? Not the one who hides or pretends, the one, at least for me, who cares about justice, the one who understands what it's like to grow up in a majority white kind of culture, but also who went to church in a majority Black culture. Yep. And then who has an immigrant perspective, right? All bringing your full self to bear sometimes is the only way to make the kind of change that I think all of us are hoping to make.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate you being so candid about that, because that is an experience. I'm telling you, we need to have dinner afterwards. Because these are very similar life experiences. I grew up like you, immigrant parents, and in a small town in Avon, Connecticut, where my brother reminds me that we weren't the only Black family, but he can remember them. I couldn't remember them. I remember when another Black family moved in, because I was the only Black child in my elementary school at the time. But yet we have that, being Black children in an all white environment. But then you also have an immigrant experience, which is very different than that of even other Black Americans. And sometimes it's hard because you are almost putting on different faces depending upon where you are. You're kind of acting different ways in different situations so that you're fitting in. And when does that point come when you say, this is just who I am, and I'm not going to change and code switch or do anything else to accommodate anybody. This is just who I am. But for many of us, that takes a long time before we come to that the acceptance in our heart that it's okay to be who we are.
Yeah, for me, it came in a lot of ways in somewhat of a breakdown almost, right? I just signed this multi-year contract in the NFL. My first one really ever. Every other year had been this grind of, will I make the team? Will I not? 1 year veteran minimum contract. And finally I had done it. I'd reached the pinnacle. I'd done what everyone said you're supposed to do. And I was empty.
Yeah.
I was empty. I wasn't serving. I wasn't giving, right? It seemed like that didn't pay off anymore. So let me just do what everyone else does. I'm going to just, focus only on me. And I'm going to do what I'm going to be, in a lot of ways, selfish and focus on the bottom line and the bottom line only. Focus on just the shareholders, not the actual stakeholders. I'm going to focus on me. And I was empty. And I sat down with a friend. It was a week before we were going to start training camp. Honestly, right around this time of year, all the football teams in a week are going back to their seasons after a 3-month off season. I sat down with a friend and I started telling him, hey, dude, I don't know what's going on, but I'm not happy. Not happy. I'm not loving my wife well. I don't think I'm loving my kids well. I don't even think I'm loving myself well. I started breaking down into tears in front of this friend of mine who'd known me for almost a decade.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know when the tears started to flow, but I'm sitting there sharing with him some of my disappointments and doubts and frustrations, and tears start to come out. And he looks at me and he says, because I said, but then I said, well, give me a week, right? Like, I'll figure it out. I'll kind of get myself together. We'll start training camp football in a week. I'll be back with the team and the guys. Everything will be okay. It'll just happen. And he looked at me and he said, Sam, if that's how you feel right now, I'm concerned about what happens when football's taken away for you. I'm concerned about when you actually do retire. And I look up, I'm wiping my tears away, and he leans in. After he says that, speaks the truth, right? People talk about speaking the truth in love. He says that, and he leans in and he says, and oh, by the way, it's really nice to see you.
Wow.
The real you, right? That's who he was referring to. And he actually recommended I go and talk to a counselor, talk to a therapist, right? So that's where this book really comes from, this place of deep pain and frustration and doubt. But the thing that I really want to point out, and I'm sure we'll get to it in a bit, but is there's no such thing as just waiting for things just to naturally happen. Like, we have to stand up and stand in the gap. We have to step up and do something. Use your expertise, right? Maybe go talk to somebody. Maybe you build things, whatever your thing is that you do. Maybe you change laws, you're making laws. Maybe it's being that mom that your son or daughter needs. Like, you have to stand in the gap. Yeah. Otherwise, nothing will get done.
No, absolutely not. So I want to jump on that because I want to talk a little bit more about this, your activism. But to kind of transition into that, I want to think about the activism and authenticity. Now, one thing that I know that you've heard a lot as a professional athlete, and particularly as a Black professional athlete, is when people sort of look at you and think like, listen, like you've said a couple of times, I had it made, multi-million-dollar contracts, you know, I've kind of got the life, I'm sort of set. I've got my beautiful wife and my family, I've got all these things going for me. But when you see, as you witness injustices that are committed against people within our own community, and you felt that compulsion to say something, to have those who would think like, you just pretty much should shut up and take your check and be happy that you've got that. You know, tell us a little bit more about why you have felt compelled to use your platform to speak your mind and to speak out against injustices that you see. And just as you know, just as a backdrop for those of you who are joining us tonight and not watching the playoffs as yet, but even just thinking about playoffs happening right now in Milwaukee, we are on the cusp of possibly in the series being over, but in the same city that about 40 miles away, where there was the murder or the shooting of Jacob Blake, which turned the city of Kenosha upside down and caused lots of protests. So it's like we can't escape that. We're not far removed from that. So talk a little bit more about how you reconcile this gilded life that you have with the reality of what's still happening within many of the communities from which we hail.
To whom much is given, much is required. To whom much is given, much is required. The fact that a lot of us, maybe we were born in America or live in America, we've been given much. The fact that we're even on this call to be able to have conversations like these, we've been given much. I think a lot of people, it's like my dad always says, in Nigerian culture, he's like, so many people talk about corruption in Nigeria. And it's like, why is it so corrupt? And all these things, which they don't talk about the corruption on Wall Street, but we'll get there later. But it's like, why is it so corrupt? And he says, man, because the mentality in Nigeria for people, right? And I'll use this, I have this little cup as an example. He says, the mentality is that you can get all you can, right? Get all you can. And then can all you get. It's mine. Can all you get, and then sit on your can. That's the mentality for a lot of people. We're given a lot, but we forget what's been required of us, right? The fact that I'm 6'3", 260 something pounds, NFL linebacker, I've been given a lot. And a lot is required of me. Look at some of the people on this call. The fact that you have your law background, the mental capacity, we've even put in the chat some of our history and who we are, like you've been given a lot. And with that gift comes a requirement to honor the gift. I think about working out and training, right? Like if you don't eat right and sleep right and train as a pro athlete, you will never be successful. The NBA Finals Game 6 is coming tonight. And you all know, a lot of us may or may not know Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is the superstar for the Milwaukee Bucks. Look at a picture of him 7-8 years ago. He's like this little tiny stick, like you know, my wife says it's like you look like an eye, like it's like literally like the letter I. And now after training and eating right and working out and all the things, he's this kind of physical, swole kind of. They call him the Greek freak.
Yep.
He'd been given a lot, and he used what he had to make himself better, and not only himself but his team. Not only his team but his community.
Yep.
And so even for athletes, I know not all of us are, some of us are, pro athletes, collegiate athletes, everyday athletes, as we talk about, or weekend war. Some of us walk our dogs around our neighborhood. Some of us have a friend who's a Paralympic swimmer, right? Some of us are in wheelchairs. We've been given a lot. And with that gift comes a requirement to do something. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. There's work to be done. The question is, will we step up to the plate and do it? Or will we get all we can all we get, and then sit on our can?
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better, which is why you said it. So thank you. So now let's talk a little bit more about that responsibility that we have because of the gifts that we've been given. Athletes for Justice. Okay, so amazing organization of which you were the founder or co-founder. And this is an organization that is committed to fighting against structural inequities. Now, though it is based in Chicago, obviously, this is a model that can be spread and extrapolated, from around the country. But give us some background about Athletes for Justice. So what were some of the inequities that you encountered within the city of Chicago that compelled you to found Athletes for Justice?
I think oftentimes when we want to make a change, you just look at your pain points, passion points. For me, and even some of my teammates with the Bears, we saw what was going on in the community. We saw kind of how some people cared and some people didn't. And we just decided to think about the things that we care about, to listen to the community as well, and try and find a match. So even from what you all have heard, this little time that we've talked, you could tell one of my most important things that I care about the most, education. Another thing that I care about, and some of my teammates care about, is youth. Another thing was police community relations. And lastly, the city of Chicago. We picked those 4 things and said, this is before Athletes for Justice even became a thing. We said, okay, what if we could, remember that I told you all about this social justice grant that the NFL had. They said, if y'all raise up to $250,000, we will match every penny. We said, let's do it. Let's go. Let's find a way. People think that athletes are greedy and don't like to give. I said, well, no, I don't believe that. We can give, we can serve. Let's show them. And so back in 2017, we were studying different organizations. We worked with the University of Chicago Crime Lab, and we started figuring out what are organizations that care about these things that we care about. So we found 4 or 5 different organizations and started just investing and investigating them. And fast forward to the off season and the season, the NFL came up with this grant. I got injured. I started looking up Janice and Nora and the team and people who were doing this work. And I said, okay, what can I do to help? So started this process of saying, okay, maybe it's a nonprofit. I know that sometimes organizations, teams, companies, and otherwise will make statements, but they don't always back it up. Right? You may have been promised something. The Shriver Center promised this thing, and all of a sudden, no one cares. I said, what if we could form some kind of organization or nonprofit that even when people didn't care anymore, even when it wasn't a hot topic, we could still push some of these issues and make a change. And so I had this idea, and it was kind of percolating in my mind. And I was like, man, we could do it. I get injured. I go sit on this meeting with Quarles and Brady, some of the leaders. I'm like, let me know more. And obviously learn more about the Shrivers and all these things. I'm like, man, this is great. I love it. And I had time to go and research organizations and kind of fundraise. And, you know, y'all can tell I love to talk. And so I'm talking to my teammates saying, hey, come on, let's do it. And we raised $827,000 from players, coaches, not even like, and it was like, and this is like, I think this is an amazing story. So we have 53 players on our roster. And not everyone is a contrary to popular belief, right? Not everyone is a you know, millionaire and multimillionaire, right? Many guys are on the practice squad, so you're making maybe a couple thousand a week, and you might get released the next week, and like you're not making six figures, you know, you're just there to practice. Out of the 53 players on our roster, 44 people gave anywhere from $30 to $30,000. And not only did they give, we had some coaches and staff who heard and gave as well. And then remember, it was matched by the NFL.
Wow.
But not only by the NFL, there was also Chicago Bears had this, it's called Bears Care. They would match what players gave. So it was matched by the Bears. Not only that, there was a separate social justice grant, number 4, that matched what people gave. So it was matched 4 different times.
Wow.
So I said, man, athletes have this ability to amplify. Athletes have an ability to connect. Athletes have an ability to fund and to kind of bring resources. What if we did this nonprofit? We started, it would be great. Let's raise all this money and send it. And I was so pumped. I was injured. I was like, this is going to be my calling and my thing. And all of a sudden the teammates were like, no, let's wait. And I'm like, no, let's wait. What do you mean? Like, this is the time. They said, Sam, we need to actually take time and really think through how we're going to do this. So yes, we can raise the money. Let's just send it directly to the nonprofits, which I said, great, sure. But we got to keep on doing this thing, because I know in a year or 2 or 3, people may not care. And so we raised the money, we sent it straight to those 5 nonprofits, and then we went through the process of starting this our own nonprofit, which we could fund and amplify and connect. Right? Athletes, collegiate, pro, everyday, walk your dog, Paralympic, it doesn't matter. And a few months later, we got approved by the IRS, and I keep on talking about Nora and Janice and the whole thing. I hope y'all not think I'm just a huge fan of kind of what they do. They helped us kind of get off the ground. Yeah. And we started this nonprofit, and there were so many times where we wanted to quit. I wanted to quit. Is it even worth it?
Yeah.
Is this thing even necessary? There are so many other people who are already doing it. What's the point? And we're really, you know, we're just almost like a pass through. We're not even like, is there even a need? What's the point?
Yeah.
By the grace of God, we didn't shut it down, because we had conversations. And then fast forward a year to 18 or so months later, we all saw the murder of George Floyd popped up again. People care again. Let's do something.
Yeah.
And the long and short of it is, we had about 10 or so pro athletes from the Chicagoland area, from all the different teams, show up on the west side of Chicago, not to protest at the time, not to post a tweet to the president at the time. Showed up. We asked some of the nonprofit leaders what they needed, what their kids needed. And they were honest with us. They said, honestly, Sam, we need someone who can just listen to us. So you talk about youth and education and police community relations. Like, our kids have been through a lot. It's a pandemic, schools shut down. Our after school program, there's no school. So what are we going to do? Things are shut down. Now this, a lot of Black and brown kids in our communities, all they see on TV are people who look like them being shot and killed. And people just kind of passively say, oh, well, you shouldn't have sold loose cigarettes, or you shouldn't have had a fake gun, shouldn't have been running around or jogging in that neighborhood. So we sat and we listened. My dad, who's from Nigeria, he would always say, listen, right? He would pronounce every bit of the T. Listen to me, listen. And so we listened, right? We listened. And we saw, because we had seen on TV looting, and rioting. We wanted to get close.
Yeah.
We wanted to get close. And so we sat and we listened with about 30 kids from the south and west side of Chicago, about 10 or so pro athletes and about 10 or so police officers. We sat and stood really outside, right? Pandemic, masks on, and these things called peace circles, healing circles, listening circles. We shared some of the things that we needed to share about some of our pain, our grief, and our grievances. Some of the things that we heard from some of the kids in the community, they said, man, how come I only see people who look like me getting shot by the police? We heard from some police officers there as well. One gentleman, he said, man, I feel like our job is to protect and to serve. And oftentimes me and my colleagues, we forget about the serve part. Heard from some pro athletes saying, man, I thought that when I arrived, that all those other problems would go away, but they haven't.
Nope.
So we heard pain and frustration and a little bit of doubt. But then after that, we decided to get close. We got on a bus and took a tour of the west side of Chicago and just a neighborhood called Austin. And in that neighborhood, we saw, I asked Jason Hayward, who plays for the Chicago Cubs, World Series champion, he was there. And I said, Jason, in our 15 or so minutes that we've been driving through this neighborhood, yes, we've seen buildings boarded up and we saw broken glass. But I said, how many grocery stores have you seen? Just out of curiosity. He said, I don't know, maybe one. I said, okay, great. I said, but how many liquor stores have you counted in our 15 or so minutes? He said, I don't know, like over 10, at least 10. And so we saw a problem. We said, okay, what if we could do something about this problem? What if we could buy one of these liquor stores and turn it into a food mart? But first we asked the kids, is this something you even want? They said, yes. We said, okay, where do you get your healthy food from, right? It's one of the projects we worked on, right? Months before we thought about shutting down our nonprofit, right? It's not, no one cares. We said, where do you get your healthy food from? They said, where do you get your food? Excuse me. They said, if we want to get food, we go to the gas station.
Yep.
Or McDonald's. We said, no, like, where do you get your healthy food from? I said, Sam, if we want to get something healthy or something organic, we have to drive 45 minutes to the next city. So yes, we would love a food mart. And so by the grace of God, we were able to raise about $500,000 from the pro athletes and bought a liquor store on the west side of Chicago and turned it into a food mart that the kids run and manage. And it's still up. It was a pop-up mart, a kind of 3-day pop-up mart. Well, fast forward a few months later, they said, couldn't we make it permanent? And so just actually a few weeks ago, we did this 24-hour radiothon, raised another $600,000 or $700,000 from not just athletes this time. Now it was almost 5,000 individuals from Chicago and other places to make this temporary food mart into a permanent one. And so I use that as an example to say that change starts with you.
Yeah.
It doesn't start with the person to the left or to the right. It doesn't start with someone else's idea or burden. It starts with your burden. The things that break your heart, the reason why you got into what you're doing, whether it's at the Shriver Center, whether it's at Quarles and Brady, whether it's at Athletes for Justice, whether it's at the Chicago Bears, like it doesn't matter. But there are these pain points and these burdens. That's what Jason Hayward, the baseball player, said. He said, man, we have to take all of this stuff, this pain, this frustration, and take aim. It's like this imagine it's like on a baseball, like take aim and knock it out of the park. And so anyways, I think about, you talk about the Athletes for Justice origin story, but more than that, it's really a story of what it means to be you, like the things that drive you, the things that people say keep you up at night, but the things that sometimes cause you pain.
Absolutely.
Tapping into that and taking aim.
Well, pain can be sometimes the greatest motivator. And so clearly you've been able to channel that and do amazing things. And so I appreciate you sharing this. I want to actually allow our audience, our folks who are joining us tonight, to have a chance to be able to ask you some questions as well. Like I said, we're having dinner because as you're talking about why should people care, it is one of the biggest questions that sometimes we have to ask ourselves in the work that we've been doing for over 50 years and how we make people care and let them know why should this matter to them. So you've touched on so many things. I'm actually going to turn this over to Kenya because I know that we have some questions that are waiting for us in the audience.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for this dynamic conversation. I really enjoyed it. And so, yes, we want our community to join in now. Just to give you some instructions, to ask a question to either Audra, Sam, or both, feel free to raise your virtual hand by using the reactions on your toolbar at the bottom right of your screen. You can use your virtual hand, or you can drop your name in the chat and we will call on you. And so, so once again, you can raise your virtual hand. I am going to go to my gallery so I can see if there's any hands. Okay, I do. And we have one of our professional council members, Ben Jacobs, has a question. Hi, Ben, you can unmute.
Hi. This is for Sam. You know, you clearly do a great job of building coalitions and reaching out to people and collaborating, you know, and as an athlete, I'm sure you know how important a vision is, whether you're on a team, everybody kind of working towards a similar goal. How have you found the means of articulating your vision to people across these wide coalitions that you seem to build? And, you know, how do you kind of pitch what you do, which is an amazing organization? How do you kind of share that vision, and what do you think you successfully do? Apologize for rambling a bit.
No, that's a great question. One of the things that I'm learning, because I mentioned I love to talk, but I'm learning to simplify the vision, if that makes any sense. To simplify the vision, to make it clear. Just recently with that radiothon, just to kind of use that as an example, or even more so, going back to Food Mart, when we said, let's buy and build it. We literally saw and counted we saw a food desert. Like we didn't know the statistics at the time. We didn't even know really what a food desert was. And the statistics go to show that there, in that half-mile radius of this neighborhood, there's 2 grocery stores and 17 liquor stores. That was before we built what we built. But I just showed people, like, hey, like, get close. And what do you see? Well, I see a lot of liquor stores, and I see very few options and opportunities for healthy food. Okay, great, that's a problem. So what do we have? What can we do, whether it's resources, whether it's time, whether it's ideas, what can we do to help provide a solution? And so for us as pro athletes at the time, we had wealth, we had a little bit of money, we have a voice. So let's raise this money. Even with that, those guys giving, they gave, I mentioned earlier, some people were giving anywhere from $30 to $30,000. With this, people gave anywhere from $100 to $100,000. So some people have means, but others have ideas. Man, I wonder what it would be like if I could, do this or change this, right? Some of us are builders. We love building, Ben, as you said, coalitions, or even building things or building teams. Some of us are visionaries. We see things before they happen. Some of us are voices. We can speak the truth in the midst of confusing or diluted situations. And so for me, one of the things I always wanted to do was to use my voice for good. It was just about simplifying the vision. Hey, there's a problem. This is one way we can provide a solution. And then to the masses, hey, there's this food desert. It was a temporary pop-up. The kids love it. They still love it. They want to make it permanent. Can you help? There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it, right? Even with the Shriver Center, hey, there are laws that need to be changed. We talked, Audra and I got a chance to chat not too long ago. It's like, hey, here's the reason, like, you want to dwindle down like why this poverty exists still? I saw this statistic, I don't have the numbers now, but it was talking about how many billionaires there are now in the world and how many millionaires, like it's in America, the numbers are astronomical now. Like, how is there still poverty? Right, so sometimes it's just having those difficult conversations and saying, okay, this is the cause. Let's provide a solution. just simplifying it all and taking away all the cutting through the noise.
Thank you so much, Sam. We actually have another question from Raj Bora.
Hey, Sam. First off, thanks to you and Audra. I mean, this is really great conversation. I was interested by kind of the beginning where you talked about your origin story, so to speak, and your background of what's brought you to this place. And I wonder how do you see that influencing the work that your organization is going to do, particularly in the when I think about, you know, you talk about the kids that you're working with on the West Side and how, you know, there is this, you know, healthy or unhealthy, even to adoration for athletes. Yet your kind of passion for education and, you know, the role models you've had in your life, how do you see that influencing the work that your organization is going to be doing in the future and using that platform for, you know, to inspire children, so to speak?
No, I love that question, Raj. I think you're asking, how do you essentially bring your full self to bear, right? Like your origin story, your history. I mean, for me, some of my background is I'm from Dallas, Texas. That's where I was born and raised. Parents are from Nigeria, as we mentioned. I played football at the University of Texas. Still connected to the university, still go back and do work at the university. Just this last year, I got a chance to go and speak to the football team about some of these issues, but also to the soccer team. And just earlier today, I had a conversation with someone from the soccer team saying, hey, Sam, I want to make some change. Can you help? Right? Can you help? And so just to the question of how do you, you know, what's next almost, or what drives you? For me, it's just going back to those places that I've been or those ideas that I have and just being a resource, right? Not trying to be the first or the fastest, but how can I be a servant? How can I be a resource? How can I add support, right? This young girl, she plays on the soccer team. Her name is Maddie. She's like, man, we tried to do this work last year and I reached out to all these principals at these different schools to do some stuff with the kids and we didn't hear anything. So we kind of just squashed it. We waited and finally we got on the phone today. It's like, hey, sometimes those no's are setups for the best yeses. What do you mean by that? Well, when you're offering a service, you're trying to help people and they're saying no, I feel rejected. But no, like you're going to find a yes, that's going to be a great partner for you and the work that you're trying to do. So don't be discouraged, right? If anybody knows how to hear no's, right? I fired my agent in my 8th year in the NFL after I got injured and released. I called all these general managers and they're like, nope, we don't want you. Nope, you're not good enough. Nope, you're a step slower, right? And it was hard. Anyone who, you know, hearing no is hard, but finally I found the right yes. Finished my time in Chicago, went on and signed with Tampa Bay and finished my NFL career there. And it was better than I could have ever imagined. Sometimes those no's are just setups for better yeses. And so what I see coming next is finding people like the Shriver Center, right? I talked with Audra and some of the team earlier. It's like, I need to, because like there's some policy work that we need to do. We're very much like project oriented, but if you want to talk about making an actual change, real change comes with policy. It does, changing laws, changing rules, changing the way people think about things. And so for us, it's like, man, let's find partners who are actually doing it. You look at the Shriver Center, it's like, y'all been doing it. They've been doing it. But sometimes you hear a lot of no's. People don't care. You know, maybe it's not time. I just did this podcast. I have a podcast called the Athletes for Justice podcast. I had this professor called Alyssa, her name is Dr. Alyssa Richardson, and she teaches about mobile journalism and mobile activism and how that's kind of changed the scope of the world. And her book, she had a book and it just came out 2 weeks before George Floyd was killed. She didn't plan that at all. She'd been doing this work for years. And all of a sudden she said, okay, I think I need to write about it. She wrote this book and it got released. It's called Bearing Witness While Black. And 2 weeks later, the murder of George Floyd, devastating, but it was like, oh, this is timely now. So I just think sometimes we need not forget that the work that we're doing is important, but also we need to remember that we have to step up. If we have like money to give, we need to give it. It's not about canning all you get and sitting on your can. It's about giving. It's about serving. It's about loving, thinking about those who are less fortunate, right? To whom much is given. To whom much is given.
Sam, I cannot think of a better transition. And you're right in regards to the need to partner with organizations. Oftentimes, the misconception is that donors feel like they have to choose between giving towards direct service organizations or funding policy advocacy organizations like the Shriver Center. And honestly, my response is give to both, right? Because, quite honestly, the two cannot coexist without one another. And if we want to see real systemic change, we must invest in both. And so with the last few remaining minutes, thank you, Sam, and thank you, Audra, for this just dynamic conversation and just being such transformational leaders. I actually want to transition into the importance of fundraising for the Shriver Center. As many of you know, the Shriver Center attacks the root causes of poverty, and we partner with community organizations, much like Athletes for Justice, many of our coalition partners, individuals who have boots on the ground and are working with community members, and they know the problem, right? And so now it's not just only finding a solution for today, but it's about finding a solution, permanent solution for tomorrow. And in order to do that, oftentimes we have to find a legal solution. And so if you believe in the power to change laws and to change lives, I am asking our change maker community and members of the community to make a deep investment of $1,000 or more today. We have a fundraising goal of $15,000 to fund an equitable recovery with permanent supports for workers and families. And if $1,000 is not within your budget, please give a meaningful gift to you that will still go towards our $15,000 goal, because every dollar counts. Give by scanning the QR code that's on your screen right now, or you can give through the donation link that is provided in the chat. Now, the Shriver Center, we are advocating for access to quality healthcare, stronger work protections, safe and sustainable housing, and reforms for justice-involved individuals. And quite honestly, we cannot do that without your support. And we honestly want to create a path out of poverty for millions by using the law. And if for some tonight, if you would like to give, but not online, but you would rather give through your donor advised fund, please email my colleague, Carly Faison, using the email address in the chat, just to share your interest in giving through your donor advised fund. And yes, that too will go towards our $15,000 goal for this evening. And for those of you who are new to the Shriver Center, this year alone, we have eliminated money bond in the state of Illinois. We have advocated for emergency housing protections because as all of us know that we're experiencing a housing crisis at this moment. And then the Shriver Center has also expanded health coverage for low-income Illinois residents 55 and up, regardless of their immigration status. However, right, we still need paid sick leave. We need more advocates, organizers, and attorneys to be trained in racial justice concepts throughout the nation. And ultimately, we need an equitable recovery that has permanent supports for workers and families. And I believe that we can do that today with every person under the sound of my voice. Again, give by scanning the QR code on your screen now or through the donation link, or you can email my colleague, Carly Faison, your interest in giving through your DAF. And yes, we will count all of the donations received during registration for this event towards our $15,000 goal. Thank you for joining us. And please don't forget, this fall, we have the finale of our Road to Recovery series, Real Change for Communities of Color. We are so excited about this event. We will be announcing our lineup very soon. And also for the members of our Changemaker community and those on this call, we have a donor recognition event on November 9th at 5:30 with Bobby Shriver, the eldest of Sergeant Shriver's 5 children. And this event is hosted by our board member, Sheila Kennedy. So we hope that you will join us this fall. We have a wonderful lineup. And again, thank you, Audra. Thank you, Sam, for this dynamic conversation. I took quite a few notes, and I look forward to reading your book, Sam. And I look forward to, I hope you two are able to connect while still here in Chicago. Stay in touch, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.
Kenya,
Yes,
I know we're short on time. I know we're about to head off. I think it's important if I do this, and obviously if people got to go, you can go. But while people are giving and thinking about giving, I'd love to ask a question because I did a ton of talking, and if you got to go, I get it, but it's only be a minute or two. Because we talked about, man, we had the phenomenal question. I think it was from Ben saying, "Hey, Sam, like, how do you get people together and like what is it important in the message and the simplicity?" And I'd love to ask whether you or even Audra, just even because it's like, okay, I want to give, but I don't know what it's going to, right? I want to help, but I don't know, what is it gonna do? Like, I think there are a lot of people right now that's like, man, I want to and I would give more, but I need some kind of clarity. Like, Audra, could you maybe in a little bit, I know I'm not supposed to ask, but I'm the answerer, but like, could you like say, hey, like, this is what your money's going to, right? We talked about like the policy, but sometimes even for me, that can be confusing. And it's like, well, what do you mean? You change laws? Like, how? Like, can you just kind of quickly before we go, I know we're a minute or two over, actually 3 minutes over. We're not going to be more than 5, I promise, maybe 6. But can you quickly say while people are giving or even considering giving, hey, what is my money or my gift or my time or my energy going to?
No, thanks, Sam, for asking that, because it is sometimes hard to describe where is your money going and am I really helping? So fortunately for Shriver, because we are an organization that we do our advocacy in multiple ways, so donations that we get allow us to do many different things. So for example, and Kenya has made reference to this, when it comes to, and so have you, when it comes to changing laws or even just making policy, we spend a lot of our time, for example, doing legislative advocacy. Not only are we working with crafting bills or supporting bills that we know are going to impact people within, impact the communities that we serve. So we will spend a lot of time doing lobbying. We'll spend a lot of time crafting legislation. We'll do a lot of work in promoting that sort of legislation to see it be passed. So when we talked about the elimination of cash bond, when we talk about some of the legislation that we've been able to pass to help those families who were impacted by COVID with respect to housing, those are the sorts of bills that we are able to support and to promote that are going to directly impact our families, because someone has to be able to do it. We are also providing support to our peers, not just in Illinois, but across the country, because we support peer networks. There are many advocates like us that are trying to do as much work on the ground, but they have questions. How do I do this? What's the best way to do this? What has worked in your state that, that we might be able to adopt? So we convene tables where fellow advocates can come and say, how can I do this work and have successes, and share their success stories so that we can spread the successes that we have in Illinois across the country. We also do training for advocates, not just legal advocates, but lawyers, but anyone who's working in social justice organizations who wants to do this work, but through a race equity lens, because you've talked about it a lot. It's about listening. Remember, you can't just get out there and just do whatever you want to do. You need to be attuned to the needs of the communities that you serve. You need to think about the work you're doing through this anti-racist lens. And so we have a training department that actually works specifically with fellow advocates to help them be the best advocates to advocate for those communities that they serve. So there's multiple ways that Shriver actually is out and about, which makes us so distinct from a lot of our peers. So the money that people are able to give tonight allows us to do advocacy on multiple levels. So it's hard to describe in a nutshell, but I hope people do recognize that there's more than one way to skin a cat. Terrible reference, but there's more than one way to be an activist.
Thank you. And Kenya, I'll pass it back to you. I know we're closing, but just like as you're thinking tonight, right, and the links in the chat and also the email as well, be a part of that change, right? Like change starts with you, and now it's time to continue that change. So whatever you can give, right? We talked about, you know, some guys gave 10, 100, some gave 100,000, some gave 30, some gave 30,000. Whatever you can give, whatever you can bring, bring it. It's not about logos. It's not about egos. It's about making change. And that change really does start with you. So thank you, Audra, Kenya. I'll pass it back to you. Thank y'all for staying a little bit extra. I know I talk a lot, but I really wanted y'all to understand why the Shriver Center and giving to the Shriver Center is so important.
Oh, thank you so much, Sam. It was a delight to talk to you actually last week, and also to hear from you today. Such an inspirational conversation. And actually, to answer your question, the way I like to tell my family members, because they always say, well, what do you all do? What do you do? And I say, well, we change laws, we enforce it, and then we teach others to replicate it through our national networks. So, you know, this changing laws are permanent solutions, right? And we need permanent solutions so that we will not continue to have systemic barriers that are impacting people in poverty and impacting people of color the most. So thank you all so much for joining us today. We have lots of love for you, Sam, in the chat. From Janice and many others. We have to log off, even though we don't want to, but we have to log off. And thank you so much for your time. And thank all of you for joining us and staying about 8 minutes over. Take care and enjoy the game.